so we don't have to mold and mix and refrigerate them like we would the ordnance gel. The two mediums do not behave exactly the same, but for testing handgun ammo for penetration and expansion, the results are usually comparable. Where you do see a much bigger difference between the synthetic gel and the organic gel is in the temporary wound cavity. That's when the gel stretches out kind of like a balloon outward right after the bullet impacts. It looks really dramatic in gelatin, especially on high-speed video with the clear gel, but with pistol ammo, that temporary cavity is not actually a good indicator of how effective the ammo is going to be. That is just one of the ways that pistol ballistics differs radically from rifle ballistics, which is another topic I asked Johan and Chris to talk about.
I think it can be pretty easily summarized by something that we, myself especially, learned from Buford Boone at the FBI many years ago, where it was determined that human tissue, by and large, has a certain elasticity threshold, and which really means is when a handgun bullet or a projectile at handgun velocities hits human tissue, we display very briefly, too fast for the human eye to see, the so-called temporary wound cavity, right? We're made up largely of water, a non-compressible substance. In other words, that water gets out of the way of that bullet screaming in, on impact. We have that large temporary cavity, and because we are elastic by nature, we recover from that. Our tissue recovers, comes back together, and what's left is the permanent wound cavity, namely the crushing path that bullet took through us. This temporary wound cavity, as we expand and recover from, is different when projectiles hit at greater than 2,200 feet a second. At that point, it appears we have surpassed the elasticity capability of human tissue, and that temporary wound cavity begins tearing at its limits and margins and becomes a permanent wound cavity, which also is a conclusion why people who are center punched with rifle projectiles typically succumb much quicker than people who are hit with handgun projectiles. The byproduct of that also seems that when a rifle projectile at those velocities bypasses an organ, you will still have organic damage, whereas a handgun projectile needs to directly hit a vital organ to do organic damage.
Wow.
Very big difference in the outcome.
All right, here it is, Brandon. A few years ago, we used to have a lot of mass shootings. I mean, like 2017, 2016, 2015, a lot of mass shootings. And the doctors here in America was unprepared for the wounds that came from those mass shootings. Why do you think that, Brandon?
I have no clue.
They was using rifles and not handguns.
Okay, but shouldn't they be equipped to handle that still?
Just like a doctor said during that time, he said, I didn't see these wounds since I was in Iraq in a war zone.
Got you.
So okay, let me explain the difference between a rifle and a bullet. A rifle round and a handgun round. This gentleman said 2,200 feet per second is the magic number.
Mm-hmm.
Anything under 2,200 feet per second, when a bullet goes inside you and it creates a little shock wave, the shock wave don't have that enough force to rip tissue around it.
So basically, the handgun bullet. Correct.
So basically, your fat or your stuff just move around the bullet and come back like nothing happened. But when a rifle bullet going over 2,200 feet per second hits you, when it does that little inspection, it passes the breaking point of our tissue and start ripping things around it.
Right.
For example, you could get shot in your hand with a handgun bullet. You just got a hole through your hand. You get shot with a rifle, your hand may explode off.
Right.
Your hand may explode off. For example, here's another thing. You may get shot in your arm with a handgun. You got a hole through your arm.
Right.
You get shot with a rifle, the whole thing just exploded on your ass.
Right. The side note, because I